Hey everyone, I hope you're safe and healthy in these strange times when many of us are stuck at home. I'm here with another video, and this time we're going to talk about the gap between the player's knowledge and their characters. Where do we encounter it in our games? Why is it even a thing? And how can you use it to create a better game as a game master or player? If you find that interesting and want to see more tips on running tabletop RPGs and building worlds, consider subscribing to my channel. You can click on the bell icon to receive notifications whenever a new video comes out. When I first thought about this video, the subject was a bit different. It all began a few months back when Clay and I talked about insight checks and their tricky nature. The reason they can be tricky is because the players know exactly how much they rolled, and that hints whether they can rely on this information or not. Say I'm a player attempting to figure out whether the goblin we just met is being honest or not. I roll a d20 and of course, score a natural 1. The GM tells me I trust the goblin, but I know I rolled a 1, so in reality, I better not. Had I rolled a natural 20, I would definitely trust the goblin, in and out of character. Now, my character is not aware it failed a skill check, because the entire concept of skill check does not even exist for my character. Instead, it should only act on the information the GM gave it, even when I, the player, know better. That, of course, assumes I did not metagame, but we'll get to metagaming later on. One solution to that problem is to hide these rolls from the players. If a player wants their character to get a read on an NPC, the GM could roll in secret and tell them what their character believes. That way, the player and character receive the same answer, and we reduce the gap between what the player knows and what their character does. Problem solved, right? I mean, we can apply the same solution to perception and investigation checks and have a game where the characters have only the information their players do. That was my original idea for this video, and there's a point to be made there, certainly, but I want to point out something else. Every game in the world, yours included, rests somewhere on a scale. That scale represents the size of the gap between the player knowledge and the character knowledge. On one hand, we have the zero gap. Whatever you know, so does your character. There's no way you can cheat or break the game by bringing in information you shouldn't have because that information doesn't exist. On the other side of the scale, we have the maximal gap. Games in this category aren't your traditional role-playing games. Some would argue they are not role-playing games at all. When I try to imagine a game with a close to maximal gap, I think of a group of authors that write a story together. They know everything there is to know about the world, but the characters know only what the authors want them to at any given moment. Most games average around the center. Where do you think your game lands? In any game where a knowledge gap exists, it is possible that the players will take advantage of it. We call that metagaming. Generally speaking, metagaming is any use of information that the players have but the characters do not. When people say someone is metagaming, they usually mean it in a bad way. Imagine your party encounters a troll, but not the common internet troll, the actual creature from the monster manual. Trolls can regenerate and are virtually unkillable unless they are burned. So fire is the only weapon that can halt the regeneration of a troll long enough for someone to kill it for good. An experienced D&D player will probably know that fact. If such a player, upon seeing the creature, chooses to say, "It's a troll, kill it with fire!" that would be considered metagaming.
In the dungeon! Troll in the dungeon! Thought you ought to know.
There are some good uses of metagaming. Stick with me and we'll get to them later. One benefit of minimizing the gap is removing the potential of metagaming from the game. The fact that the opportunity exists does not mean our players will abuse it, of course, but let's assume that for this example, we are running a game for a bunch of goblins. Now, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd bet goblins would metagame the hell out of any game. I'm sorry if there are actual goblins in the audience, feel free to correct me in the comments. Okay, so we're running a game for a bunch of D&D veteran goblin players, and our goal is to stop them from metagaming. Let's look at the troll example again. One solution is not using trolls at all. Their knowledge of trolls is irrelevant if they simply never encounter one. Another solution is homebrewing. We could say that in our world, trolls regenerate just fine when you burn them. Instead, you need to throw acid on their wounds to halt their healing powers. This approach requires more work on the GM's end, but it could create a more challenging encounter, even for our veteran D&D goblins. Another way to reduce the knowledge gap is by applying what we've discussed earlier in the video, hiding the dice results on certain checks. That's not really hard to do, though it might be a little less fun for our players because, you know, goblins are always looking for a chance to show off their shiny click-clack math rocks. What about things that actually happen at the table? Say you split the party. I know you shouldn't, but it's too late, no backsies. Half of the goblins are now in the scene while the other half are not. Just think about all the information the other half gets without even being there. Let's say the first half goes spending their blood money, while the second half stumbles upon a strange hole in the ground that they feel like exploring. The hole leads them to the lair of some creature. An encounter breaks out with the second half, and the first half, of course, will drop everything that they were doing and run as fast as they can to help the second half, even when their characters have no way of knowing it. Alright, fine, you're splitting the party, half of you wait outside, I'll call you when it's your turn to play. Whew, we fixed that one. That, however, feels a bit extreme, don't you think? I think this solution does more ill than good. So we could go on, attempting to completely remove the gap, and I promise you, it will get even more ridiculous with every step. But I feel like at some point we need to stop and have a conversation with the goblins. They need to accept that there is going to be a knowledge gap no matter what we do, and that they should stop abusing it for the sake of everyone's enjoyment. And when the goblins laugh in our face and call us stupid, we need to kill them and take all of their dice. What about the other way? What happens if you want to expand the knowledge gap? It makes the game more vulnerable to metagaming, but at the same time there are benefits to that style of play. Navot, a good friend of mine, told me that he uses cutscenes in his game. Scenes that happen around the table without any of the player characters present. Instead, he narrates and acts in front of his players to show them something that happens elsewhere in the world. At first, I was against the idea, and I'm still not keen on using it just yet, but I see the merit in it. Think about it like one of those scenes in a movie where you see the villain plotting his scheme.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
What orders from Mordor, my lord? What does the Eye command?
We have work to do.
It has an effect on us as viewers. It makes us more interested in the story and more invested in the world. Our world is suddenly larger than that of the main characters. A similar thing happened in his table. Instead of watching the game solely from the eyes of their characters, the players get to be spectators in a story much grander, and they care about the setting as a whole. The drawback here is that the players will know, at least vaguely, what is going to happen. But that was information the GM chose to give freely. So is it really a drawback? I'll let you answer that. Whatever the case, if this is practiced with good players capable of applying the good kind of metagaming, they can use that information to lead the story towards a more satisfying and dramatic place. Yes, here we are at last, as promised, the good kind of metagaming. Let's say we followed Navot's lead and played out a scene with one of our villains, a drow that wants to raid the surface and kill an elven colony. When the player characters face a choice between following two plot hooks, they will favor the one leading to the drow because they know something interesting is sure to follow. Here's another example of good metaplaying. Let's say a player in your game decided to play a character with very low intelligence. During the game, that player will often ask themselves, is my character smart enough to figure this out? The answer to that question can alter the course of the game sometimes. Perhaps the player decided it will be more interesting if they fall for the obvious trap of the shady NPC they just met. That's a legitimate decision, and I'd argue, a good one. Can you think of more ideas for good uses of metagaming? Let me know down in the comments. If there's one thing I want you to take from this video, is that we'll always have knowledge gaps in our games. But as long as we do not abuse them and practice the good aspects of metagaming, we can use them to our advantage. Thank you for watching. My name is Aviatar, and I'm always around Discord if you want to chat about anything tabletop related. We're already fairly close to 1,000 subscribers, which is amazing. I want to see this community grow even further. If you want to help make that happen, share this video with a friend and leave a comment down below. Until next time, friends, you are awesome, keep being awesome, and I'll see you beyond the screen.